Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Kristin Myers, editor-in-chief of ETF.com, here for another Leaders Talks. I'm joined this time by Bryan Piccirillo. He's a certified financial planner at Edward Jones. Now, of course, this is one of the conversations in our Leaders Talk series where we talk to members of our Leaders Top 100 financial advisor community. Bryan, thanks so much for joining me.
I appreciate you taking the time to chat.
Of course. So I always love to ask, how or why did you become a financial advisor? Because while some folks wanted to do this from the time they were very young, I always feel like it's a pathway that not everyone knows they want to do from the time they are a little kid.
Yeah, I was not on that pathway initially at all. I grew up in a household of my mother was a nurse, so I grew up helping people, and that was always the thing. You're going to go to school and do something in healthcare, which I did. So I actually have a doctorate in pharmacy with a master's in business. So I started my career, as a pharmacist and in healthcare. So it was definitely not going down the financial route, but there was a business component that I really was around, and they were small business owners as well. So I kind of had a business acumen to me. But when I graduated in my 20s, I had money to invest. I went to an advisor because that's what people told me to do. That's what you do when you have money and you don't know what to do with it. And then shortly after that, after kind of doing some research on my own, I actually discovered the advisor I was going to was basically putting me in investments that were really bad. So after discovering this, did some digging, I realized I actually lost about $300,000 in fees and expenses that, I couldn't get back at that point. It was just really bad advice that I was getting from the advisor. So with that sour taste in my mouth, I learned everything I could about finance at that point, only with the sheer aspect of never having that happen to me again. But you fast forward 10 years, being in pharmacy, doing pretty well for myself. And then I reached a point where I didn't need a paycheck anymore, wasn't fulfilled in what I was doing, still really wanted to help people. And that's kind of where finance came back up. And I said, I did really well at this on my own. And I thought I could make a difference in people's lives through education of making sure you don't fall for the same traps I did, as well as using the principles that I learned to build wealth over the course of time without kind of getting tricked into anything that might be a fad or just fly by night type thing.
Well, I mean, I guess I have to ask if you have like one or two top tips of that education component to make sure that anyone watching doesn't kind of fall into that same sort of trap. What would you say to someone who is looking for an FA or is seeking that sort of financial advice to really make sure that the advice that they're getting is good and that they don't lose $300,000 like you did with a bad financial advisor or a bad financial planner?
Yeah, well, they say you can only learn lessons through failure. So that was my failure, and I've definitely learned my lessons on it. But I don't want anybody else to experience that. So a couple of things you can do is, one, even if you don't really like it, educate yourself a little bit, understand what's happening, and maybe work with somebody that will educate you and tell you why you're making decisions. Don't get caught up in the world where it's just like they do it. I don't want to be bothered with it. I don't want to know anything that's going on. So that's really big for me with my clients as well, of just educating on, they may not care why we're doing it, but I want them to know why we're doing it. Work with somebody that's, there's a lot more regulations and laws in place now too, but work with somebody that might be a certified financial planner as well. They have a lot more standards that they have to uphold to become a fiduciary within their line of work, and interview a couple people and just got to get a feel and get that vibe from people of,
Right.
Are they does it sound like they're giving me good information? Is everybody giving me the same information, but this one, why would this one be the outlier kind of thing? So,
Like finding a good therapist or like dating someone, you have to kind of go on a couple of dates or interviews or conversations before you can kind of really settle in on someone you like.
When I was in management, we called it the trust but verify rule. I trust you to do everything you're supposed to do, but every once in a while I'm going to verify to make sure you're doing it appropriately.
Yeah. So I want to ask, because one of the reasons you're on this list is because you use ETFs, and not just you use ETFs a lot in your portfolios. So why? What is it about the ETF wrapper that you particularly like?
So many reasons that we could go down, but I'll focus on three. All right. Three is, we'll keep it at that because I know we've got a time limit here. But one, diversification. I mean, with ETFs, for minimal dollar investments, you can get into thousands of companies. That is huge for especially younger investors or people that don't have a lot of money, is that we can create a solid portfolio with a lot, one fund, one ETF might have thousands of companies in it. And that's huge of making sure you're not kind of stuck in a bubble of relying on one company to perform or not perform. That could potentially really disrupt your planning. Second, I work with a lot of people that are investing outside of retirement. So business owners or people that want to retire early. And you've got to wait 10 years before you can really touch those retirement buckets. Tax efficiency is really important. And you see that in ETFs outside of retirement as well. So creating, not only the investment growth and gains that you want to see, but also avoiding taxes when we can, or minimizing in them. Extremely important as you go down that journey. You don't realize how important it is, I think, at the beginning until later on. And index funds and ETFs are really good at helping in that. And then, the one that everybody always thinks of, lower expenses.
Yeah.
If I can get something that performs just as well as other products out there at a lower expense, that's a win for everybody in that scenario. So why wouldn't I do something that's going to cost somebody less?
Do you have a favorite fund ETF?
It's like naming your favorite child, isn't it? Like, you're not allowed to do that legally. I think there's some unwritten rule on that. But honestly, why pick a favorite when there's so many and it's so individualized for a person? And that's kind of why there's a favorite for every single person that I sit across from, just because everybody's situation is different. So the favorite for one, completely different than the favorite from the next person I sit down with. So do I have favorites? Probably, but there's hundreds of favorites, and I don't think you're allowed to have hundreds of favorites.
And 4,000 plus ETFs right now that you can pick from. So I guess everyone can choose their favorite flavor in the box.
I don't want to eat vanilla ice cream every day, and it all depends on what's going on and what the mood is. So my favorite can change quickly. And like I said, it really depends on the person and individualizing it for the person, not necessarily what I think is the best.
Yeah. All right. So this is my fun favorite question that I love to ask. And you already told me that you have a pretty unique one. So what would you say, Bryan, is your biggest, funniest, worst financial mistake that you've ever made?
So it is going to go back to when I first graduated college, and I called myself, I thought I was an adult then, but now I look back, I'm like I was a child, my 20s. Being a pharmacist, getting my first real check. It wasn't like a work study check of like $50 anymore. It was like an actual real life check that I could spend money and buy things with. I did some impulse buying, I'm not going to lie. And the one,
no judgment. We listen and we don't judge.
exactly. Well, somebody's judging out there, I promise. But I was decorating my first apartment. Never forget, I was in Cleveland, Ohio. I bought a $400 shower curtain. So that was probably something that, that was like, it was really cool. It looks great. And but $400, whatever. It's cool. I like it. So
made out of gold.
It was not. I'm not going to call it the brand name or anything, but it was like a paisley print. It was like a silk material kind of thing. But it was a $400 shower curtain. And then I look back and I'm like, that was probably one of my dumbest purchases.
Oh, you know what, Bryan? I'm going to say this. I actually commend you for even having a shower curtain. As I'm sure many people can attest, there's not too many men or young men in their 20s that even own a shower curtain or even know that there's supposed to be one inside and one outside. So honestly, I think $400 still perhaps well spent.
In my defense, because after I realized how much I spent a couple years later on it, I only just got rid of it 5 years ago. It was in the guest bathroom for like 15 years. So it did have high quality. It lasted.
It lasted. See, there you go.
I will say
one of your worst mistakes ended up being, at least it sounds like it had net positive benefit.
Return on investment was $20 a year I paid for it. So it was, I feel like it all worked out in the end, but probably a unique purchase that many have not made. And when you look back, it probably wasn't the best.
I think that is definitely a first for our leaders talks. But
I told you.
Well, Bryan Piccirillo, certified financial planner at Edward Jones, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.